A giant metal object in the shape of a pyramid, perfectly visible to the naked eye, hovered over the American capital. Interestingly, hundreds of people actually witnessed this phenomenon. Here are the shots of eyewitnesses, ordinary passers-by on the streets of Washington. As Ilya Prokofiev reports, an alien ship with a diameter of about 100 meters hung at a half-kilometer height above the city, rotating around its axis and emitting a dim light. NASA received some data from this spacecraft, which is still being processed by agency employees. This was confirmed by the staff of the Canadian Observatory, who allegedly recorded signals from the ship. But the same pyramid has already arrived on Earth 10 years ago, to us, in Moscow. Here is such a country UFO was recorded on the 9th of December, 2009 year over the Moscow Kremlin. A huge pyramidal object hovered over the capital of the era for several hours. The video was shot from several points and got into all the news of the planet. World experts are convinced that the aliens communicated with the Russian authorities. And interestingly, over the past 10 years, the number of cases of abnormal unidentified activity on the moon has sharply increased. Look at these sensational shots. Several objects appear above the edge of the lunar disk, perform maneuvers, and hide behind the opposite side of the moon. And in this video, a whole squadron of UFOs sweeps over the moon. 3 objects in an even formation, as on a military parade, cross the bright side of the lunar disk and disappear into the shadows. And these are not specks of dust on the telescope at all. And today, the activity of the anal over the moon is just off the scale. Amateur astronomers arrange a real hunt for frames with images of lunar UFOs. Many are lucky. Here is another shot of a black ball caught in the telescope lens. An unknown object with incredible speed sweeps over the lunar surface and disappears into outer space. But, it turns out, all this activity, not news to the NASA Aerospace Agency. Moreover, American scientists have been following them for a long time, as one secret document that someone launched into the press tells. Here is this unique document. It appeared 2 years before the Apollo 11 manned lunar mission. Perhaps NASA employees wanted to determine where lunar UFOs are most often observed, and send astronauts to such a hot area to establish contact. Or, conversely, avoid it. NASA's catalog of lunar anomalies includes a wide variety of information. If we talk about the meaning of the photos that were taken by astronauts, then even just looking at the photo it becomes obvious that there is an alien base on the moon. Individual pictures had such clear anomalous objects that Johnson was ordered to retouch them, and destroy the most obvious ones. But he did not listen to his superiors and took copies of them. For many years he kept his photo archive secret and only now decided to share this information with journalists. I guarantee that something was built there and you can see the ancient ruins there. It's funny that after I posted photos from the archive for free access, people around the world discover places where ancient ruins were located. These photos clearly depict man-made objects that nature could not create. Pyramids, spires, towers and more. There are buildings that resembled destroyed ancient cities. But the most shocking thing is that not all the structures found on the moon look ancient and abandoned. There is evidence of the existence of an extraterrestrial civilization and that we have already come into contact with it. Buzz Aldrin stated that during the Apollo 11 flight to the moon, somewhere in the middle between the Earth and the moon, they arrived very close to another ship that was emitting a bright light. No one on Earth understood what it was and even received a proposal to abort this mission and for the intervention of UFOs. Moreover, Ken Johnson claims that the astronauts of the Apollo missions found traces of an ancient civilization on the moon and photographed them. Moreover, the NASA agency hid this information from the world. Let's take a look at the pictures of Ken Johnson. The photo shows geometrically correct outlines of the anomalous lunar surface, with an area no smaller than terrestrial Los Angeles. Some geology consultant dubbed a clear three-dimensional image of Los Angeles on the moon. It seems that you are looking at the avenues and streets of earthly cities. In another photo of Johnson, 6 towers are clearly visible. The researchers even managed to calculate their height. About 200 meters. Look, here is another photo with a giant tower on the surface of the moon. The researchers called it a pin for its similar shape. The height of the Skittles is about 7 kilometers. For the lunar surface, which has been subjected to asteroid and meteor attacks for millions of years, such an object. Absolutely artificial structure. But the most striking photo is provided by Johnson. A huge pyramid on the far side of the moon. Doesn't it remind you of the Earth pyramids on the Giza Plateau in Egypt? According to Johnson, all Apollo lunar missions were accompanied by UFOs that observed the actions of people. Con Johnson's interview made a lot of noise. But despite the evidence he presented of UFOs on the moon, NASA ignored this disclosure, and any mention of Johnson was removed from the official NASA websites. However, independent researchers, based on the analysis of the cache of search engines, found that Ken Johnson had recently really participated in the Ambassadors of the Solar System program, and in 1969 he was responsible for the photographic data of lunar missions, so his data is impeccable. But in Johnson's footsteps there is a certain cleaner. Although Johnson is far from the only owner of strange pictures. Back in 1994, the aerospace agency NASA, together with the U.S. Department of Defense, launched a satellite called Clementine into the orbit of the moon. His main task was to conduct a complete photographing of the lunar surface, both the visible and the reverse side of the moon. As a result, about 1,800,000 photographs were transmitted to Earth. Then NASA was not able to process such a large amount of information. There was not enough power of computers and people. In 1997 year, the photos were published on a special website on the internet, and everyone was invited to help in the analysis of lunar images. All photos were presented in their original form. We just didn't have the opportunity to quickly paint over all the suspicious areas. And the researchers were able to see something that was usually available only to specialists of the level of Ken Johnson. Here are some of the photos that Nikolai Subodin analyzed and saved on the disk of his computer. In 1998, with his colleague from the United States, Steve Wengate, he created a website dedicated to lunar anomalies. Together with other researchers of lunar mysteries, they collected NASA's non-retouched photographs on it and even created a detailed map of lunar anomalies, where unusual phenomena are most often observed. And then they praised themselves that they managed to make copies. Watch carefully. Here they are, those sensational pictures of the Clementine Automatic Station. There is no room left for speculation and fantasies. The photo clearly shows the remains of some kind of artificial structure. And in these images taken by satellites in the early 70s, absolutely unthinkable phenomena are captured. Some objects move across the lunar surface, leaving zigzag tracks behind them. But the most striking thing is that Soviet apparatuses also took photos of strange objects above the surface of the moon. Look at this picture taken by our rover Lunokhod 2 in 1973. An unusual spherical object above the horizon is clearly visible on it. What is it? An alien ship watching the Soviet lunar module? And this is a crater taken on the far side of the moon, which looks more like a hole in the surface. This type of crater was called collapse craters. However, researchers of lunar anomalies suspect that these are nothing more than the remains of underground lunar structures. Well, what is most striking, it is from such craters, as from underground hangars, that unidentified flying objects appear. See for yourself. And here is another spectacular video. The rapid launch of an unknown vehicle from a brightly illuminated lunar crater. An Earth spaceship would surely collapse from such speeds and overloads. Although, researchers say, today we do not have such machines, and those who lived on Earth before us could probably fly to the moon, and even build cities there. This version has a foundation. Recently, at the excavations of the ancient Sumerian city of Nineveh, archaeologists found a strange clay tablet. The author of this ancient document claimed that 3,200 years before our era, a certain King Ethan soared to such a height from which the whole earth seemed to him small, like bread in a basket, and then completely became invisible. In the 12th century BC, the Chinese ruler Wan Yi allegedly traveled in near-Earth space. According to a widespread legend that has come down to our days, the Chinese were once residents of the moon, and then, for some reason, decided to move to Earth. However, there are also quite material finds that indicate that our ancestors had not only airplanes, but also space rockets. This shocking hypothesis has solid evidence behind it. Take a look at these amazing finds made in Costa Rica. The age of these figures is several thousand years. Scientists believe that this is a schematic representation of birds. However, no bird has so many strange wings and tail. Most of all, these finds resemble miniature copies of an airplane. One of the former technicians of the U.S. Air Force concluded that they are similar to the F-102 jet fighter. And these golden airplanes from the ancient graves of Indian chiefs of the American province of Talama seem to be copied from modern light engine aircraft. Aviation engineers Peter Belting and Al Gutenbaum, having decided to check the flight characteristics of the golden airplanes, created two copies in 16-fold magnification while maintaining full proportions with analogs. One of these models was equipped with a propeller engine, and the other model, jet engine. As the subsequent experiment showed, both copies, painted by aircraft designers in golden color for persuasiveness, showed excellent aerodynamic properties. The models could not just fly, but also use radio control to perform figures related to aerobatics, such as a barrel, a dead loop and the like. Moreover, they could freely plan with the engines turned off and perform maneuvers even in gusts of wind. The success of aircraft modelers has not been ignored. At the suggestion of the German Aerospace Aviation Society, the researchers held demonstrations, after which experts unanimously recognized that the ancient golden figurines. This is a copy of the devices created by man for flight. But the most striking find was made the other day. Look at these amazing drawings. They depict diagrams of real rockets, but these drawings were made in the 15th century. Long before the works of Konstantin Edgeridovich Tsiolkovsky, this book describes the principles of jet propulsion, presents the schemes of a rocket projectile. Serious ballistic calculations are given, without which no space flight can do. Such documents indicate that we have a fairly superficial idea of the technical level of our ancestors. Recently, the Bavarian Library has published another amazing collection, the Archive of Patents and Inventions of the 14th, 15th century. More than 100 works were collected in the first known patent and in the 1618th year were entered into the Bavarian Library. There are guns, prosthetic limbs, wings, and even a tractor. Dozens of strange inventions that we've never heard of. But this amazing collection allows you to open another unknown page of ancient history. Look at these ancient documents. They are more like a manual for space navigation. But the most intimate secrets of antiquity are kept in the archives of the Vatican.